What about, are there any plans for Wilson to design Wilson audio drivers, the drivers themselves?
That is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have we have the space to do it. We have the curiosity to do it. In one sense, it makes a lot of sense for us to do it because then you have control over that element. If you're manufacturing the drivers yourselves, then you're not paying somebody else's profit to do that, so you could ostensibly reduce your costs and pass those on, to your customer. Those elements argue in favor of it. What argues against it is that the different vendors that we work with have different design approaches. Mm-hmm. And if we're using one driver, like the driver that we used in the Watt Puppy System 8, it's a very good mid-range driver. Mm-hmm. But when we wanted to make a change, we could do that. And if we had invested, in developing a certain approach in driver development, you become invested in that.
Yes. And
it becomes more difficult to just say, look, we've got to let go of that and move into something else. So there are pros and cons for doing it. We certainly have the sales volume of speakers. Mm-hmm. For our vendors. We're one of their largest customers.
Sure.
But it's something that we've talked about. We're not doing it right away or anything.
Sure. Okay. Now the current generation of Wilson speakers have a felt baffle covering, mm-hmm. and you went from foam to this new felt. Mm-hmm. Was that something that you tested sonically, or obviously it is much better looking, mm-hmm. so, or is it something that you wanted to improve in terms of the look of the products, or is it there's a sonic benefit to changing over?
Well, that was definitely sonically tested, and it proved to be advantageous. Mm-hmm. I think one reason for that is because it is softer, it tends to reflect high frequencies less. So when you have a foam that's even as rigid as the foam that we had, it will reflect a certain percentage of the high frequencies. And with this absorbent material, you really don't want it to reflect anything.
Yes.
And so that I think that's one reason why it sounds better. And we know that having the foam on the front baffle improves the sound of the speaker. And I know that there are other manufacturers who have their speakers without, diffraction control foam or anything mm-hmm. like that. And it probably makes the speakers a little more attractive without their grills on. Yeah. But on the other hand, sonically, it is not as good.
Sure.
Where I notice that primarily, is in lower treble, upper mid-range intermodulation distortion.
Sure. I guess that, and in combination with, or in addition to, the improved drivers have made a remarkable difference in the current mm-hmm. generation speakers.
Yeah, everything makes a difference, and it accumulates. If you make good choices, they accumulate in the right direction. If you make bad choices, they accumulate in the wrong direction.
That's right. Okay. Now, I noted that you have extensive notes and data on various recordings mm-hmm. and the equipment that was used at these recordings. Now, does this data play a role in the design and the voicing of Wilson speakers? Do you refer back to those recordings for each and every design?
I do refer back to some of those recordings. Mm-hmm. When there's a particular aspect of the sound that I'm working on, I will want to think of good musical material that will address that frequency range and or dynamic range that we're looking at. And so it is good to have a reliable, expansive source of test material.
Sure.
In addition to that, I simply love some of the music, and I really like to, remember over the years which ones are better and
Yeah,
so forth.
yeah, okay. And play them back again and again, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah, of
Mhm.
course. Now, aside from yourself, is there a team of Wilson players that actually voice the speakers? Obviously, with you having the final.
Yeah, we have a engineering research group, and we work together as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, what will happen is I will come up with an architecture for a product, and it's almost always a product that catches my fancy. Cheryl says that I'm looking for a new toy. And maybe that's true, but sometimes you have to be realistic and say, well, like with the What Puppy 8, there were things that I wanted to do to improve on that, and I didn't want to just wait to do it. So it was something that I felt needed to be done, and I really wanted to do it. I was curious about it. Sometimes there are products like with the center channel and with the surrounds where I have asked the team to develop it without much input from me.
Sure.
I'll be working on something else, let's say, or I just feel that, I want to see what they can do.
Yeah.
And they've never let me down. They do a very good job.
Sure. Yeah. Now, the company, again, talking about models, the company has been on a roll in terms of new product releases. And I was just wondering what we can expect in terms of future products near future products coming from Wilson.
Well, you saw at the Consumer Electronics Show that we will have by the third quarter of 2011, we will have a very complete line of center channels, two of which can actually be used as left-right stereo pair. The Polaris for big systems, which nevertheless, they want the speaker to have a lower profile, but to have the dynamic capabilities of the Max and Alexandria. And then the new Mezzo, which is basically, electrically it's almost like a Sasha on its side.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But of course, the geometry of it, the configuration is a lot more favorable to good performance than just laying a Sasha on its side.
Sure.
And then beyond that, I really can't say much. But we have plans going out for the next 2.5 years.
Okay.
And we're working on projects along those lines.
Sure. Okay. Now, you've recently appointed a new distributor in Australia. How is that relationship building?
That relationship's very good. And I think that, Trent, I'd like to get your input on this too, so that,
Maybe come around. That's
so this is our new distributor in Australia, if you could comment on that, because Trent works directly with him.
Yeah, as you know, Joseph at Audio Connection has been a distributor for many brands for many years, and is one of the major players in Australia for the high-end market. Joseph, as you know, also was a dealer for our previous distributor, Simon Kern, and so is familiar with many of the products as from his days as being a dealer, and has just continued selling the products. He also now not only retails the products there in Sydney, but distributes them throughout Australia for us, as did our previous distributor. So, doing a great job.
Excellent.
Does great advertising and represents our products as he did before in a very professional way.
Does Joseph also represent Wilson in New Zealand, or is New Zealand a separate?
Currently, he's appointed to distribute in New Zealand as well,
Sure.
and has contacts there
Okay.
for retailing the products in New Zealand.
Sure. This might be a question for you as well, Trent. What are the strongest markets for Wilson Audio around the world?
Oh gosh.
In Europe, Germany and England and Italy, and in Asia, of course, China,
Yeah.
Taiwan, Singapore's pretty strong.
Sure.
Korea is
a growing market.
Korea is very strong.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have historically, this is our second distributor that we've had there, but Korea's historically been a very strong market for Wilson Audio.
Sure. How do those markets compare in terms of size with a local market here in the US?
The United States, if you were to go back to 2006, which is just before the real estate bubble started to,
Right, yes.
leak, I would say that 55% at that time of our world sales were North America.
Right.
Now, I think it's probably more like 40% North America, about 40% North America, 60% international.
International, right.
And Asia is a little stronger than Europe.